Okay, we are live, folks. We're very close to 10:30. Should be kicking over here shortly. We'll give people just a couple seconds to arrive, and then we will get started. How you doing, Mark?
Don, I couldn't be better.
Good. That's great.
How about you, Don? You look great with the headphones on. I'm
It's a,
telling you, it's
it's
a new look. You really got to go out with that more.
yeah. I should. Yeah. I think I
The
maybe
80s are
up
coming
my
back.
cool factor.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughters would be impressed. All right, I think we are ready to kick it off. So, thank you all for joining us. My name is Don Baham. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for Germantown Technologies, and I've got a passion for team and company culture. And joining me today is Marc Wolfe. I will turn it over to Marc to give a quick intro.
Hi, I'm Marc Wolfe from President Marc A. Wolfe Enterprises. Do strategy consulting and executive leadership coaching. We come up with finding ideas inside your organization that are underappreciated and help you execute on them. Don, it's great to be
Excellent.
here with you today because we have a lot to talk about in 30 minutes.
We do. So, a couple housekeeping items. We will have a PDF giveaway, so we'll be posting that link in the chat on the different streaming platforms, and then on the event page as well on LinkedIn. So, be looking for that. So, we've got some case studies to look at. So, we're looking at the blueprint for rebuilding trust, innovation, and collaboration, and we're going to do that through some case studies, one for each area, and then we'll get into some dialogue. And definitely, please put in some questions wherever you are viewing this. And if we have time at the end, we will definitely try to get to those. So, first case study is actually coming from Salesforce. I do want to put a little caveat in here. Salesforce is not sponsoring us at all. This is just something that resonated with me as I was doing some research. That being said, if Salesforce ever does want to sponsor us, hit us up on LinkedIn. We'll definitely take it. So here we go with Salesforce. This has to do with trust. So rebuilding, culture through trust. And one of the ways that Salesforce has done this is through connecting employees with their mission. So what does that mean, or what did that mean for Salesforce? So one of the ideas that Salesforce has, or one of the missions around Salesforce culture, is Ohana. It means it's a Hawaiian culture. It means family, right? So if you ever seen that Lilo and Stitch movie, you know what I'm talking about. Mark and I were just talking about some old school family shows before this started. So anyway, got the Lilo and Stitch reference, but Ohana, it means family. That's what Salesforce is all about. So how did they connect their workforce to that mission? So there's several examples that we can talk about, but one of the things that they have done in the last few years, this probably started maybe 6-7 years ago, is that they brought this idea of Ohana through their Dreamforce conferences. So Dreamforce is where they bring employees together, contractors, maybe even some outside stakeholders together, and they really rallied around this idea of Ohana. And so in what practical ways did they do that? Well, a couple of the things that they did was they encouraged managers and other departments to give time for people to talk about, what does family mean to them, and what does their family look like outside of the workforce, and how might some of those family circumstances or family way to operate work within the workforce. And so they did different exercises around that. The other thing they did was kind of doing volunteer time off. So what things can the Salesforce employees do outside of work that kind of ties back into that larger idea of family or community family, giving back to community organizations that they feel entrusted to or have a tie to. So this idea of attempting to take what's in your mission, your vision, or your values, bringing in your workforce and saying, how can we make this real to your employees? That's what Salesforce really dug in deeply to in the last few years, and it's paid off in some of the dividends around how they see their retention, what they see their employees doing, the impact they're making even outside of Salesforce, and I'm sure it helps in their bottom line as well. So that's one of the areas, the case studies that I researched and brought up around trust. Mark, what are your thoughts around how to engage workforces with the idea of what the mission is of the company and building trust through that mission?
You know, I want to go back even before the case study that goes back to thinking about why we even need this, right? So rebuilding, innovating, collaborating, trust. So Salesforce, large organization, and the larger an organization, the easier it is to become disconnected with your people and workforce. And there's two sides to everything. Some people say work is not a family, right? They say it's work, right? A family, you can't usually get rid of family members, but with work, you sometimes have to.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
but
we've seen some recent examples of that.
yeah, we have. So the understanding that if you're trying to accomplish something, how do you get people on board with this? Is this something they need? Is there something that without it, you see a gap? Because any corporate initiative that's brought on without buy-in is plastered onto somebody and it doesn't ever work, right? So when you're going to create a case study about something like this, you're really exposing yourself to, hey, if this works, how does it work? What's going on? Why did we need it? What's changed? And just understand, because there's going to be people who say, well, this will never work in my company, or this is not going to, it doesn't have to work everywhere. What happens is there's going to be pockets and areas where this does stick, and they are going to measure changes. And there are going to be things because maybe they need to be rebuilt in a way. So understand that just because Salesforce did this doesn't mean it can't be adapted and adopted somewhere where you take pieces of collaboration, volunteer time, measure it, and then work together to go and say, what do we need to change? How is this doing? And is it for internal appearance, external appearance, or is it really because it matches with your core values? And even if it doesn't become popular externally and people are throwing hate at it, you're like, we're going to do it because it's what we do. Right? There's so much more to here. So we don't want you to see a case study and think, hey, we can just globally apply it. There's so much more to talk about regarding this.
Agreed. And think about how, the mission and vision of the company you're at, or even the team. If you're large enough, maybe you've got kind of variation of the company mission. And how does that apply? One of the things that I think about in this area, long time ago, this is probably going back, well, it doesn't matter. It was a while ago. And I was at a company where one of the core values was impeccable. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't know what the core values were before I joined the company. It wasn't something I necessarily paid attention to, even though I probably should have. Not probably, I should have. I didn't.
You were younger back then, Don.
I was
okay.
I was a lot younger. So lesson learned. But hey, the other core values I understood, I could get behind. The impeccable one was interesting to me. And it took a lot of explanation from the company leaders as to what that meant, why that was important. I still remember it this many years later. I don't have any idea what the other core values were of that company that I worked at. I remember this one. I remember this one because it didn't feel right. Impeccable, like I can't make mistakes. And no, that's not what it means. And there's a lot of explanation over and over and over. But think about that from all the employees' standpoint. Think about it from your forward-facing, your client standpoint. It might sound good to a client where you're impeccable. Okay. To an employee, what does that mean? Like if I make a mistake, and it certainly was prevalent as I became a leader in that company, I could see some of the impact of that particular core value and people being afraid to make mistakes, afraid to be open and honest and vulnerable. So I think there's certainly examples as we think about how to engage in your mission that maybe there's certain elements of that you need to work around or change if you have the ability to do so within an organization as well. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
I think using words that are hard to understand for people and need a lot of explaining there's a disconnect. Humans don't want to take that much effort. So just think, you work through it, you remember it, but is it you remember it because you lived impeccability? Or do you even use that word since other than on this, right? So
No.
using words that are easy to understand and live out and are seen and are transparent and are consistent and aren't just buzzwords, that's part of what needs to be done. You look at certain organizations and you could think about customer service. It's overused, but I love using it, like Chick-fil-A, right? If you could take somebody whose first job and they can repeat things and smile and be able to do it and sincerely believe that they're doing it and they're just selling chicken sandwiches, that's amazing, right? But there's a
Right.
lot of other companies that are like that other than Chick-fil-A, but it's just easy to use them as an example because you see the difference between some even higher end restaurants where people say no problem instead of my pleasure. Or I was like, I didn't
It's
know it
different.
was a problem. Thank you for
Right.
telling me it wasn't. Right?
I've hired a Chick-fil-A employee here or there, and they're fantastic, by the way. So keep churning them out like that.
I'm glad they're not
great.
impeccable, though. I
That's
appreciate
right.
that.
That's right. That's right. All right. Let's move on to kind of the idea of innovation. So this was an interesting area to do some research in, and I actually ran across something that I had never heard of. It's been around for quite some time. It's another software company, not sponsored either. But again, if Adobe is listening and they want to sponsor us,
They got a lot going on lately, Adobe. We might have to wait online.
I'll send you my Venmo. Anyway, so Adobe, quite a few years ago, created this kickbox program. And it was the idea of allowing individuals within the organization to find different ways to increase innovation in different departments. And it really allowed individuals as well as teams to really think outside the box. So the initial way that this was implemented with Adobe is it was, I believe, like literally kind of a box or a digital box of information and kind of a guideline for teams to go. They were given a budget. It was about online ads at the time and kind of what would sell, what didn't. They were able to create a fictional product and see what would happen in the general public. Just around an idea or something that really didn't even exist. And then they would use those ideas, ones that found popularity, to build on and see if it, there's things that they could build in an existing product or put a new product or service together. But it really allowed kind of autonomy for these individuals and groups to just think and throw stuff up against the wall and see what happened. That has evolved, so it's not just an Adobe product anymore, service anymore. It's actually moved over to a nonprofit that produces this digital kit. I downloaded it. It was, I don't know, a couple hundred pages, PDF pages, but it outlines the entire process that this initiated with, and this idea of innovation and really bringing out ideas from anywhere in the company. I'd say also there's an element of collaboration, because in some of the ways that the program is implemented, it doesn't have to just be an individual. You can bring in a small team. You can bring in multiple teams that are working on a kickbox program and allow collaboration between those team leads. So there's a kind of a self-innovation kit that you get. There's a step-by-step process. It can range from 4 to, I think, 8 weeks in length, depending on how you structure the program. And it, like I said, it does provide some autonomy and accountability. So again, you may not have the budget to throw a lot of a high dollar figure at this, but maybe there's some expectations that you can set coming out of this program. We want to see kind of these milestones. Let's follow this structure. Here's the budget you have, regardless of how big it is, and how can you stretch that budget to see if your idea maybe has some merit. So we'll give some information in the PDF, like I talked about, some links to that program, links to some of the Salesforce content, and links to the next case study we'll talk about. But Marc, what are your thoughts on innovation in general? Maybe the idea of this kickbox program, because I think it was new to you as well. Just let us know what you're thinking about innovation.
Thanks for researching this. what I see is that there's a lot of information out there and structure that allows people to do collaboration better, right? There's design thinking, IDEO does that, right? There's a lot of things out there where collaboration. One of the things I've seen is if you have a culture of listening to ideas. So here's just a quick tip that I see is that if you're going to call a meeting, and meetings, everyone has meetings, usually too much. Just talked to some people recently at a workshop and they said, I couldn't get back to my boss for a week because they were in meetings so long that literally it delayed us moving ahead with the project because we couldn't get approval, right? And people were like, yeah, that's the way things go. It's like, okay, but hold on. So let's talk about innovation. Imagine there's a meeting where you don't say no to ideas. They're just ideation ideas, right? It's just to let them live and have room. So with Kickbox and other things, you might not have to read all 200 pages, right? You could get the Cliff Notes version of it or have AI summarize it for you and be able to go through and go, okay, what can we start with today? See, what we want is a whole conversation about what can we do after listening to this LinkedIn Live? Like, what can we change? What have we not tested? What should we try? You don't have to go through the whole Salesforce case study or the Kickbox material. What this is to spark perspective and to be like, do we want to be more collaborative? Do we have less people we have to do more with? Are there ideas that now is the perfect time for them to come to life? How do we get people that are unseen or unheard because they're remote most of the time to have a voice in some of the ways? All we're trying to do is look at it and go, there are ways. Usually they're facilitated, right? This doesn't just happen organically where you're like, today is ideation day. And people are like, okay, hold on. Did they have too much coffee? Like all of a sudden there needs to be some kind of structure. And sometimes, Don, we both have seen that other people that come in and help facilitate it, help this come to life because now they're asking good questions and it's a box of time and you go through it. So understand a lot of things that we're talking about, building a culture sometimes requires change. Most of the time requires change. And each one of these examples is to go and show change is a process that takes time. It has to be intentional. And if you're going to change culture, even if you have a great one, to continue it and improve it, you need to go and be structured around how to make sure this works, listening to ideas and not let it be the flavor of the day.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you touched on something that I've been able to be a part of and at times lead is, okay, so let's say, for example, we don't have time to download and read the whole Kickbox. Okay, get it. It's a lot to it. How about you start small? Start small with just your core group, your team. Maybe it's your lead, your direct reports. Or maybe it's just, your peers, but start small. Get in a room as an example. Okay, I get it. A lot of people are remote today. Okay, well, get in a Zoom virtual room. Or what I have found, regardless of, all the technology we have, get in a room together. Make that happen if you can. Fly people in, central location, whatever that is, right? And just start ideating on what the team needs to be doing or what our goals are or what are some new services, products, changes that we need to make as a team or as an organization. And I've also had the opportunity to have sessions like that facilitated. And that just takes it up a notch. If you can do that, it takes the load off of you as a leader or other people to think about the questions, do the facilitation, do the logistics around it, just allows you to focus more on the ideation. So, small takeaway, find time if you can as a leader of a team or a company to take some time away, so dedicate some time, bring in those folks that you want to include, bring in a facilitator if you can, and I think you'll be amazed at the outcome.
So Don, before we move on, one other thing I want to bring up is an actual example. So people were inundated with meetings all the time at this organization, right? And because some people were required, right? We have these stand-ups. They're going to be at a certain time every week. The reason we have them is because we want this consistency. It's all these reasons why they had these meetings. And they brought me in to go and have a discussion to say, we need more time. We can't get everything done. So the first place I'll look is, okay, let's talk about your meetings, right? And I came up with the term bumped, best use of my prioritized time, right? So that's my acronym. I help spread it through the organization. They're like, that's great, but unfortunately, we can't not show up to a meeting we're required to be at. Okay. So we found a canvas, right? And a canvas is obviously just a bunch of questions on a one pager, right? And it was actually trying to figure out for this organization, is this an ideation meeting? Is this an informational meeting? Is this a feedback meeting? Is it defining the meeting before it gets started? And then defining who needs to be there. And if that required person isn't there because they actually are making a decision in that meeting, the meeting was canceled. And when we had this discussion, and there's more steps to that canvas, but when we had this discussion, they were like, yeah, we actually do have meetings, and then we have to have them again because that person wasn't there. And then they had the notes, but they had questions, so we had to go back again. And I was like, well, how about if we cancel that? Can we do a trial? Well, they wound up, had a 15% reduction in the meetings within the first month just by using that process. So when we talk about innovation, somebody's going to go, oh no, Don, you mean we're going to have another meeting about innovation? We're going to have to learn something else. And what I want to show is that what we're doing is reducing excess or unnecessary and replacing it with something that has an actual impact almost immediately because you did it.
Yep.
So we're not adding work. We're actually trying to take away some of the things that are overhead and be able to be more efficient by doing it. And there's ways to be able to work through that as well.
Love it. That's great. Okay, what do we have next? I think it is collaboration. All right, so this case study was interesting to me because it hits a little closer to home, being a technology and cyber geek that happens to dance as well. I don't know if anybody saw that, but anyway, so this international bank, we'll call it RBI because I can't pronounce what the actual first word is. Anyway, RBI, it's International Bank. So they created this Security Champions program, which I'm sure a lot of folks in security have heard of, the idea of. I don't know that everybody has done something like this in their own organization, but you understand the idea of a security champion. It's basically trying to reach out into the organization and bring in folks with interest and alignment to security, even though they're not on the security team. And then they kind of went a step further, which is, I found very interesting, this security martial arts training program focused on collaboration. So that's kind of fun too. Like, right. I was very intrigued when I ran across this case study, but let me unpack it for you a little bit. And then really what we want to have these takeaways is like, what can you take out of this to potentially do at your own organization, right? So bank's about 45,000 employees. It's a big bank. And you may not be at an organization that large, but I think there's elements of this that you can pull away. So they started creating the Security Champions program in 2019. So a few years ago, kind of moving to a product-led agile setup. So that's kind of the idea of the organization and the security program. They're moving towards this agile program. And they created the security champion role within the DevSecOps team. Right. So that idea of bringing in your development engineers, fostering security around application security, around DevOps, DevSecOps, same thing. The idea of really integrating security within your development lifecycle, your CI/CD pipeline, all that kind of fun, geeky stuff. So that's the idea of the security champions. I think most of us probably have heard of it, understand what that looks like. You're bringing in, folks in from other parts of the organization. They started in DevOps, which is most of the time where security champions program starts. They went that step further though. In addition to the security champions, they created this security martial arts structure. And I'll share the link to this article, which shares some graphics on how they actually presented this to the organization. It's pretty cool. But they have 3 levels, basically, right, of this martial arts training program. Kind of the basic yellow belt is what they called it. It's a 2-day module on these different aspects of security. This 3-day module for these security champions. So they kind of went a step above and beyond. And then this advanced blue belt, which kind of goes into more deeper into some security elements. And then this expert black belt, right? So what does that mean? Well, it was a way to foster security champions within the organization, but give them a path also if they really started to hang on to security and were like, I really enjoy this, maybe this is a path for me for my career. And so they started kind of bringing in a pipeline internally. And it was a way for, then they created the structure around all the security champions getting together, different security champion leads that led different departments. They would get together. This idea of true collaboration across the entire organization around security and around security in all the different elements and areas of the business really intrigued me. And I think it's a fascinating case study for how you can build collaboration around an area that's I'm also passionate about. So collaboration is a big idea, and we're running low on time. Marc, what are your thoughts around collaboration?
I think there's opportunities to collaborate outside of your domain. And what I think is underutilized is even in Nashville and other places, there's a lot of people just hang around other technologists and they only ask questions of technologists because they're comfortable, they have these conversations. Part of the things I challenge people to look at is looking outside of your own industry. So I used to ask people that were in the hospitality industry to go to CES, right? To Consumer Electronics Show. I would say to people that were in retail that even if you don't sell the products, understand what's going on. It's important when you talk about collaboration that you don't just collaborate with others in your silo where you're the only people that are actually having that conversation. So where can you collaborate? And even if you're not in banking, right? What can you learn from banking that they do well or don't do well that hurts things, right? Whether they adopting, like people don't go into branches anymore that you haven't thought about for your own organization, right?
Yeah.
I was just at a local fair that we had here, and there was a food truck that went and had 3 different ways you could place an order. So remotely,
Like
a
an app?
kiosk, and a person outside. Now, all they're doing is moving their bottleneck. But the thing is that if you collaborate by having a second truck, you can have one with an ingest and everybody's ordering and somebody else. And so there's always a way to solve it. And you're like, Marc, this is a food truck. I'm not in the food truck industry. But it's like, if you can solve it in areas that aren't what you do well, you can learn through process and being able to adopt. What we're trying to help you see is that there's not just one way to answer a question. And it's not always your boss or the leader that's going to know it. And to hear it from people that actually lived through it. And even if the idea is only half baked today, there's a way to be able to start ideating. So we would love you to reach out to either one of us, because again, hashtag not sponsored. We'd love to reach out and just ideate, just have a conversation.
Yeah.
Don and I both signed non-disclosures before to help other people with ideas that aren't competing with our industry, or we have clients that this would be a conflict of interest. But think about it from the point where imagine having somebody, a thought partner, to be able to just bounce ideas off of, understand culture. And because Don's so passionate about culture, imagine being the force in your own organization, no matter how big or small it is, where you actually can move this forward. That's why we're doing this.
Yep.
It's obviously not for the pay, and it's not to look at 2 guys that are just talking heads. It's really to see action happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Marc. I appreciate that. Now we're wrapping up on time. I just want to leave everyone with this. You know, as if you're looking for change in your organization, look in the mirror first, right? Understand what can you do in what capacity and take some action. So hopefully what we've talked about, what we'll share in the PDF, will start to generate some ideas for you to take some action. But please reach out to Marc and I if you've got any questions or you want to like ideate or just have a dialogue and how we can help. Appreciate everybody being here, and we'll look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Don.
See you.